I'm so blessed to have the support of the family that I have in my life. My family is so deeply important to me, my two brothers and my parents. But so many young people don't have that. And so many young people who, try to embrace their true authentic selves are rejected for that. And that's what really has always inspired me to do this work because I know young people who, despite everything that is going on in their lives, are so brave and authentic about who they are. And that's really what pride is all about for me. And that is something that, has really made me want to do this work each and every day because I want to make sure that every single young person can embrace their true and authentic self without fear of losing housing, without fear of not being able to get a job, without fear of having no financial security. And I'm really committed to continuing to do this work tirelessly, ensure that, the future looks different than what the current state is.
Hello, and welcome to At the Podium with me, Patrick Huey. At the Podium is a multimedia platform that brings together people from a diverse background of lives, careers, and experiences who all share one thing in common. They have stepped fully into the transformative power of finding and raising their voices to make an impact on the world we live in today. At the Podium holds a space for everyone to share their stories, to be heard, and to bring us inspiration. Today, I'm thrilled to share the podium with Connor Schoen. Connor Schoen is the co-founder and executive director of Breaktime, a rapidly growing Massachusetts-based nonprofit that is working to break the cycle of young adult homelessness. Recognized as Forbes 30 Under 30 for social impact, Connor is a young, emerging leader in the nonprofit world with a deep, infectious passion for empowering young people with the opportunities and support they need to reach their full potential. With an honors degree in applied mathematics and economics from Harvard University, Connor brings a data-informed, quantitative approach to program design and evaluation. And Connor was recently elected to the board of the National Youth Employment Coalition, where he advocates for federal funding of youth employment programs. Previously, Connor served as a Chang Social Innovation Fellow at Harvard Kennedy School, and he was a finalist in the American Heart Association's 2021 Empowered to Serve Business Accelerator and a lead innovator at the Social Innovation Forum. While working at the Y2Y Harvard Square Shelter for young adults experiencing homelessness, Connor learned that 40% of young adults experiencing homelessness identify as LGBTQ+. At the same time, Connor was in his own process of coming out, and he gained so much inspiration and motivation from the brave, resilient residents of that shelter. Galvanized into action by this experience, Connor and his co-founder, Tony Hsu, launched Breaktime in early 2018, and they have scaled it to a highly impactful nonprofit with a multi-million-dollar operating budget and the catalytic support of the City of Boston, Liberty Mutual Foundation, and hundreds of other supporters. Currently, Connor lives in Boston, and he loves to run, bike, garden, and dance salsa. Okay, Connor, welcome to At the Podium.
Thank you so much for having me, Patrick.
I'm so glad we're having a chance to sit down today. You and I actually met in Boston through Charlie Davies, who was our last season's last episode, our season finale, I guess you could say. And he introduced us because he was so impressed with the work that you were doing to help young people in Boston. And so we had a chance when I lived in Boston to really speak about what you're doing at your organization, Breaktime, that you and Tony Hsu founded. So to give a context to our conversation today, I would love for you to give us an overview of what Breaktime is and how they're helping young people, specifically in Boston today.
I would love to. So I started Breaktime about 5 years ago. And at that time, I was in my own process of coming out as pansexual when I learned that 40% of young people experiencing homelessness identify as LGBTQ+. And what I witnessed while working at a youth shelter is that there was sort of this cycle where young people would get a job for 3 or 4 weeks, they'd have shelter and some stability, and then they would lose it because inevitably they just didn't have the right supports in place and didn't have a system that was supporting them towards long-term sustainable change in their life. And so what we do at Breaktime is we really work to break that cycle. We have a 3-part program that starts with 3 weeks of job readiness training, then a 3-month job placement at a local nonprofit or small business, and then 3 years of alumni support. So our program is really structured to get people into the workforce through a supportive transitional opportunity. And also, we invest in their financial security as well. So, all of our associates, their savings are matched, they get credit counseling, and we're really setting people up with the job and financial security they need to ultimately sustain housing security for the long term. Because without job and financial security, breaking the cycle of young adult homelessness is impossible. So, that's really what we focus on at Breaktime. Grown a lot over the last 5 years. We now are about a 25-person team. We have over 142 young people we've worked with. 83% of these young people are now working and or in school compared to 12% prior to the program. 77% are now stably housed. And we're just seeing a lot of growth and impact through this really strategic model of providing a support and landing pad for folks into the workforce. So really excited to be here and talk more about our work and what we're learning. And thank you so much again, Patrick, for the invitation.
I'm so happy to highlight what you're doing because I think we all can understand that homelessness among youth, among families is a problem, but you're actually doing something to address that problem. I was on your website before we talked and looking at some of the statistics that you were sharing about homelessness in youth, and it was pretty startling. On your website, you say that 1 in 10 young people between the ages of 18 and 24 experience some form of homelessness each year. That's 10%. 40% of youth experiencing homelessness, to your earlier point, are LGBTQ+, and 89% of youth experiencing homelessness are either Black, Indigenous, or people of color. And then as we dig deeper into those statistics, you say that 75% of those homeless youth are unemployed because they don't have a proper address, they don't have transportation, and they don't have mental health services. So with that, they become almost unemployable. So that the whole idea of people saying, well, just get a job is not even a reasonable response for someone who finds themselves in that situation. And then in terms of the LGBTQ plus community, you say that youth who identify as LGBTQ plus are double the risk of ending up homeless because their families reject their identity or they reject their gender orientation. And then for Black people, the story gets very bleak. We're only 13% of the population, but we represent 39% of the homeless population and 50% of homeless families. And if you're a Black male and you identify as LGBTQ+, you have a 25% chance of becoming homeless or experiencing what you call explicit homelessness. And for our kids who are in foster care, you say that 4 years after they emancipate, they have a 25% chance of becoming homeless. You call the foster care system a pipeline to homelessness. And I wonder, looking at these statistics, it's startling, Connor. And if you add in children, we're almost talking about a national epidemic. Am I understanding and seeing the data correctly?
Yes. And you correctly identified all the drivers of that. What's missing in this system to support young people is that we think about this issue narrowly in the scope of just housing. Housing is obviously a core and central part of the issue. But to address this challenge, we also need to be thinking about people's job and financial security. That's what we do at Breaktime. Because when you look at why, like you said, 25% of youth transitioning out of the foster care system are homeless 4 years after emancipation from that system. Folks have certain pathways into stable housing, but they might require a job or they might require that you pay a portion of your income. And it's just not sustainable if you don't have the job and financial security pieces in check to be able to sustain any type of housing. And so I think when we talk about this issue and the way in which it's disproportionately affecting communities who are already disproportionately affected by so many other issues, we really have to ask ourselves why this is and what we need to do about it. And it really comes down to job and financial security and making sure that we have a pipeline for young people into the workforce, that we're helping them to build long-term income, the savings, and the strong credit that they need. Because if you're 18 years old, you're kicked out of your house, or you've never had stability to begin with, and you have no savings, it's impossible for you to get an apartment. It's impossible for you to start to build that sort of stability for yourself. So we need to be thinking about these issues holistically and really investing in the job and financial security of young people experiencing homelessness.
Hunter, why is there such a seeming misalignment between the remit of something like the foster care system, which I would imagine is in theory designed to help young people or children who are in bad or not workable family situations? Why is there such a misalignment between what the remit is and what the results are?
As we worked with more and more youth transition out of the foster care system, what we realized is that these young people have some supports through that system and through other programs, but there's always these missing pieces that are critical. And so one of the things we do at Breaktime, beyond the direct services we provide to young people around job and financial security, is that we also provide them with a pathway coach who's a master's in social work student who works with them to identify and address those gaps. But I think what's missing is we just don't have enough comprehensive wraparound supports for these young people. And we try to provide it here at Breaktime, but it's really a team effort. We all need to collaborate. No one organization can do it all. And so we're really focused on working in partnership with other organizations that are doing incredible work so that we can fill all those gaps, because no one of us can fill every single one of those gaps. But together, we can address the whole system for that young person and provide them with a holistic system of support.
And do you find the other services that other organizations are trying to provide, is there a natural, or is there are those organizations willing to help each other, or is there competition for resources amongst those organizations?
Oh, absolutely. I think by and large, organizations are really eager to collaborate. One of our core values here at Breaktime is collaborative innovation, and we think constantly about how we can strategically and effectively work with other organizations to meet the needs of our young people. And when it comes to working with other nonprofits, each of us can address a portion of the issue. But if we're not working effectively together, we're never going to address the whole issue for each young person. At Breaktime, we think about getting people into employment and supporting them in building a successful financial future. But at other organizations, they're thinking more directly about providing housing and shelter, which is something that we don't do at Breaktime. They're thinking about providing mental health services, which isn't something that we do directly at Breaktime either. And so being able to refer between organizations and having those strong cross-referral partnerships is so, so key. We have a very decentralized social service system where we have a lot of different providers, a lot of different small providers. And so our ability to work together as a network is absolutely essential in making sure that every single young person has access to all the right opportunities and support that they need.
And what you're describing in terms of wraparound services, in terms of people coming together, is there a role for government to really help orchestrate all of these different services? And if there is a role, are they willing to step into that space?
Absolutely. So Breaktime, we're based here in Boston, Massachusetts, and we work very closely with both the city of Boston and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on everything we do. And they're an exceptional partner that really cares deeply and wants to solve these issues. The biggest thing that I've learned through doing this work, the main issue is not the existence of resources, it's the coordination of resources and how we work together to effectively support each young person that we're trying to support. And so when it comes to the government's role in breaking the cycle of young adult homelessness, the number one thing that they can do is more strategically invest their money in solutions that are working to address this challenge. Because if you look at the way the state government structure here in Massachusetts, there's an Office of Labor and Workforce Development, there's an Office of Housing under Health and Human Services, the Department of Mental Health. And so everything is sort of spread out and decentralized in its own way. And so government's ability to coordinate resources from within and strategically make sure that all sort of pieces of the challenge are addressed in their investments is the number one thing they can do. And so the way the government decides to spend its money in that budget, the way that they go about putting restrictions on that funding is extremely impactful and something that we do a lot of advocacy around because it really affects the work we do here at Breaktime.
Are there legislative things that a government can do to help in your particular situation? I know we've discussed driver's licenses and birth certificates and how youth who are homeless or coming out of these very difficult situations, their home lives, don't necessarily have access to a driver's license or a birth certificate, which you need to get a job. So how legislatively can a government help or governments help on a very sort of micro nuts and bolts level get things done for people?
So you brought up the issue of IDs. So here in Massachusetts, to get a state ID, first of all, there's a cost associated with it. And secondly, there's different documentation requirements that can be hard for people to navigate if they've been displaced from housing. They don't have that, drawer in their house with their birth certificate and their social security card that they go back to every time they need those documents. They're homeless. They don't have that consistent place to keep all these documents. They go to get a state ID and they start to face all these barriers. Well, you don't have your birth certificate. Here's what you need to do to get your birth certificate. Oh, wait, you don't have your social security card and you need that to get your birth certificate. And it becomes this whole maze that is expensive and time consuming. And for young people experiencing housing insecurity, there's not that. They don't have that time and they don't have that money, those resources to waste on a very convoluted maze of a process. And so one thing that the state government can do right here in Massachusetts is to subsidize the cost of getting a state ID and also simplify the documentation requirements for young people experiencing homelessness so that it's not such a headache for a young person who's experiencing homelessness to get an ID. And the government has already started to do some pretty transformative work around ID access for other populations. Recently, a bill was passed here to ensure that non-citizens can get driver's license regardless of their immigration status or their documentation. And so we're making a lot of great progress in a lot of areas. Young people who are couch surfing, who are doubled up living with someone and they're not on the lease and they're just staying there because they have nowhere else to stay. Young people who are in shelters or in transitional housing, they're often forgotten about. And I think that, sometimes people assume, well, they assume that folks just have parental support and that, if things aren't going well or they can't yet afford an apartment, that they have parents to lean back on and parent savings to lean back on. But so many young people don't have that. 88,000 young people here in Massachusetts are disconnected from work and school and don't have the support they need. And so when we look at addressing these issues from a legislative perspective, we have to remember the unique issues that young people experiencing homelessness face. We have to remember we have to really analyze the ways in which they are interacting with government systems and where things are going wrong, like the ID issue that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we don't know what has to be done. I think it's pretty clear to a lot of us in this space. And it just takes the right action and leadership from government to make it happen.
You live in this world every day. It's been a passion of yours since you were basically a child. Why are we here? Why are we in this situation where there are people being born and raised in America who find themselves at very young ages unable to exist within the framework of our society, and they end up homeless? It probably becomes a generational situation where they're probably having children who are going to also be raised homeless. Why are we here?
There's a lot of different reasons, but some of the core reasons are that we're thinking too narrowly about the solutions to these challenges. We need to be thinking about job and financial security and combinate as a means to get to housing security. We need to be thinking about how is a young person experiencing housing insecurity, getting into the workforce? How are we helping them to build income, savings, credit? We need to be thinking about every single piece of that young person's journey and all the things that they require. And I think that some of our approaches to these challenges from the macro perspective, from the government perspective, are just too narrow and don't focus on the whole comprehensive picture. But I also think that some of these things we've identified clear solutions to, and we just need leadership and action in making it happen. There are a number of bills that we advocate for at Breaktime because we're learning constantly from our young people every day through our program about things that government should be doing differently. So we help to elevate their voices on the policy level. And what we see as clear and simple and effective proven solutions, we're just not seeing them happen. And I think that there needs to be a real commitment to getting things done and getting things done quickly, because Every day that we are making it more challenging for young people to get a state ID, for example, is a day that they're not working, that they're not accessing certain services that they can't get without that state ID. They can't get employed. And so we all need to be really committed to taking direct action to fixing the issues that are holding back our young people. I think the final piece is really around awareness because you don't see these young people every day. Even if you're living in a city where street homelessness is a large challenge, as it is here in Boston, these young people are not visible to us in the same way that people experiencing chronic homelessness on the streets are visible to us. And so I think in addition to thinking more comprehensively about solutions, in addition to being really committed to taking direct action when it's clear that that's what needs to happen, we also need to be committed to spreading awareness about this issue and making sure that it's on people's minds. Because one of the biggest impediments to getting anything done on the government level is prioritization. Is this something that the legislature has chosen to prioritize? Because there's thousands, even tens of thousands of pieces of legislation, and there's only so much time to debate them on the floor, to give them a hearing. And so if something isn't prioritized, if the leadership of government doesn't decide like this is going to happen, then it doesn't even get the time of day it needs to be considered. Even if everyone in the legislature would have voted yes for it, it doesn't happen if it's not prioritized and it's not added to the docket as a key thing that we need to discuss.
What role does race play in this? Because if I look at your statistics and look at the people who this seems to be really impacting, it seems like race and gender identity and social class are obviously really at the core of a lot of what's happening here. How much does that impact people's willingness to get fired up and get these types of solutions on to the legislative agenda?
You're so right, Patrick, that fact, the way in which young adult homelessness disproportionately affects people of color, is something that really raises the urgency for us to address it. Because every day that we let this issue continue in the way it's been is another day where a young person who's facing systemic problems everywhere they turn is continuing to face issues with their housing and their housing security that make everything else harder in their lives. And so I think this disproportionate impact on Black, Indigenous, and people of color is something that completely raises the urgency of addressing this challenge and reminds us the ways in which all of our systems really are designed and exist in a way that is negatively and disproportionately affecting Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Is it scalable what you're doing at Breaktime? It seems like if there was an opportunity to take this initiative, this work that you're doing into other states, it might help generate a momentum that could sort of perhaps build even federal legislation around support for youth who find themselves in this situation.
So the work we do here at Breaktime is absolutely scalable. And so we've developed a model that unites a lot of different partners around this work and thus brings in different sources of revenue to fund it. And so our focus right now over the next 3 years is bringing this work statewide here in Massachusetts. We've just launched in the region north of Boston and are starting to work with young people there. And gradually over the next 3 years, we'll be spreading out across the state to make sure that any person in Massachusetts has access to the opportunities and support that they need to escape homelessness and to secure job, financial, and housing security for the long term. And we're able to scale this because we have the partnership of local nonprofits and small businesses around the state, because we have the partnership with the state government and local governments and the federal government as well, because we have a deep commitment to this work from the individuals, foundations, and corporations that are interested in breaking the cycle of young adult homelessness. So this work is scalable because it's already scaling. We're seeing tremendous growth. I mean, we worked with 68 young people last year. We've worked already, the year's not even over, with 142 young people this year. And we're continuing to scale up because we know how urgent and important that is. On a national scale, in the long term, we do want to work towards making the model we have developed available to a national or even international community. But right now, we're really focused just here on Massachusetts and making sure that the work that we're doing can have impact outside of the most major population hub in Massachusetts, which is Boston, because there are many other cities and communities outside of Boston, Massachusetts, just as there are outside of big urban hubs in other states that require, the same types of services and don't get the same level of investment. And that's why we're really focused here, because there's a young person in the western part of the state that doesn't have access to any services right now. It's super important that organizations like Breaktime find a way to support that young person. So that's really the mission that we're focused on, and sort of what our objectives in terms of scale look like over the next few years.
It's interesting because in your personal life story, and you alluded to it earlier, you were working at Y2Y near Harvard with these kids who were coming through who were LGBTQ plus, and hearing their stories and seeing what they were going through, and the pipeline that was leading to homelessness. And here you were in your own personal life, dealing with your own sexual identity. But on the opposite side of that, you had a supportive family. You had the resources, not I'm not talking financial, I'm talking the emotional resources to support you through that journey, through that coming out story. And the irony was not lost on me that had your situation been different, you could have been on the other side of that services equation that you were working on and working with.
I'm so blessed to have the support of the family that I have in my life. My family is so deeply important to me. My two brothers and my parents, who have been endlessly supportive of me throughout this journey of starting my own organization, coming out of college, not knowing if I was going to have a salary, and also investing in this work that was so deeply important, but also deeply impactful to me. But so many young people don't have that. And so many young people who, try to embrace their true authentic selves are rejected for that. And that's what really has always inspired me to do this work, because I know young people who, despite everything that is going on in their lives, are so brave and authentic about who they are. And that's really what Pride is all about for me. And that is something that, has really made me want to do this work each and every day, because I want to make sure that every single young person can embrace their true and authentic self without fear of losing housing, without fear of not being able to get a job, without fear of having no financial security. Unfortunately, that's not the reality, but there are things, as we've discussed, that we can do to change that. And I'm really committed to continuing to do this work tirelessly, ensure that, the future looks different than what the current state is.
Connor, you have a true heart for the work that you're doing, for advocating for youth. I wonder where that comes from within you, and who nurtured that within you.
To tell the story of how I got involved in all this, and what continues to drive me to be committed to public service, I want to sort of rewind 10 years to when I was an eighth grader, actually. And I was
Middle
selected.
school.
Yeah, so selected to be part of this statewide organization called Project 351 that works with one eighth grader from every city and town in Massachusetts, and coaches and supports them through a year of service, learning how to lead service projects in their hometown, and continues to support them in alumni in terms of, navigating a career in public service and continuing to make public service a core part of their life. And so, when I was in middle school and all throughout high school, Project 351 provided the support and opportunities that I needed to truly understand how to run service projects. So I was running a clothing drive and a food drive in my hometown. It introduced me to the nonprofit world as a profession. That was so radical to me, because I think even still to this day, I have friends that don't fully understand the fact that you can have a salary and get paid to work in the nonprofit world. That I believe it's about 10% of the United States workforce that works in nonprofits. And so for me, at a very young age, I got introduced to this field. I got the coaching and support I needed to start to build some skills in this field. And by the time I went off to Harvard for college, I already knew that this is the kind of work I wanted to do, because all of my, mentors and heroes were in this space. Even if you look behind me on my walls, there's some posters from Project 351 of some of the service heroes that they celebrate and that they teach us about as part of our journey. And those people have continued to be my guiding lights in terms of the work that I want to do. And the opportunity that I had through Project 351 just completely changed my life. Um, I actually got to know Y2Y, the shelter I used to work at, through them.
Mhm.
And that the rest is history. I got introduced to this work. I knew I wanted to work in this space. And the second I saw a solution that needed to be happening for this problem, I wanted to go and build it. And without all of those different pieces, without that whole opportunity to be involved in public service at such a young age, I don't know if any of this would have happened. But I do know that, from a even younger age, this was the kind of work I always gravitated towards. And I'm so fortunate that, you know, that I get to find an opportunity that worked for me and that I really found my dream job at such a young age.
Have you ever thought about public office? Because oftentimes people come to the political arena from the nonprofit or the private sector because they have a mission to get something accomplished and they see the inertia, the lack of understanding, and that can often be a great platform from which to launch political advocacy.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by the world of politics and particularly the world of policy and making change on a systemic level. I think that we need systemic change. That's how we're going to really turn the needle. And that's why, in addition to our programmatic work, Breaktime is so committed to elevating the voices of our young people to the halls of City Hall, to the State House, to the halls of Congress. Um, and I've had experience working in the governmental realm. I was the chair of the Governor's Statewide Youth Council when I was in high school, and have always been involved in policy in and out of break time and advocating for change, for making sure that our young people's voices aren't forgotten. It's something that fascinates me. It's a tool that I think we all need to be engaged in to be moving forward the types of change that we want to see. And in terms of professionally, what I see moving forward, the work I do at break time is 100% the work that I want to be doing and the work I want to continue to do for probably at least the next decade. But would there be a time at some point where I consider a different path that involves, being more involved in government and bringing the change that I want to see more to the systems level? Absolutely. But the things that I'm learning through being the executive director of Breaktime, the experience I'm getting with my team, with the young people I work with every day, I wouldn't trade this for the world. There's no other opportunity that could even begin to sway me away from the job that I have. I'm really in my dream job. It's something we actually talk about with our young people at break time. Like, what is your dream job? And I'm always, the example of the person who got really lucky to find their dream job super early.
Right.
But almost everyone, like, we kind of go through like tons of existential crises and trying to figure out what we want to do. That's really the norm. And I never take for granted the fact that I'm so lucky to be in the job that I have, and I don't want anything else in the medium term. But knowing how much has changed for me over the last 10 years since I started as a young person, Project 351, it would be naive of me to say that 10 years from now I might feel differently. So I think we'll just have to set a timer, Patrick, and maybe revisit in 10 years and see if I'm thinking it all a little differently.
Right. Right. I wonder, there's so much data, there's so much statistics about the cost of someone going to prison versus the cost of helping someone have a jobs program to get a job, the cost of homelessness versus having someone have a proper place to live and a place to go every day in their life and be a contributing person to the overall cultural society that we were all a part of. Where is the disconnect that happens that people stop caring or stop believing that there can be solutions? How do we take the data, the statistics that we all know, that we can all go online and read, and turn that into fire for action?
Yeah, it's a great question. And before I dive into the answer, I'll add that, national data suggests this was from 2018. So inflation and rises in costs have changed this. But in 2018, the government was spending over $35,000 per person per year on people experiencing chronic homelessness. So we think about the return on investment of investing in preventing chronic homelessness and working to support young people experiencing homelessness and gaining housing security. The benefits are insurmountable compared to the costs associated with getting young people out of this situations. I think where the apathy comes in is just, we're all frustrated. We've seen obvious challenges with clear fixes for too long that have gone unaddressed. No matter how much I've worked in the policy sphere or engaged with government, I still don't understand why certain things can't happen, especially when there's the political will to get them done. I think that's the most frustrating piece. There's like clear things with bipartisan support that would get passed if they were prioritized that just don't make it to the docket. And it frustrates me to no end. And there's definitely times where I feel a bit, put down by that, where I feel lost and feel like, is there even hope of things changing? But then there's consistent and constant reminders from heroes of mine that have followed my whole life of why persistence in the face of struggle to create change is so important. Why it's so important to remain committed to something that you know is right, even if it feels like nothing is moving. Because sometimes it takes a while to build up the momentum you need to sort of push an object out of its inertia, but then you can really get the ball rolling. And that's kind of what's helped me. I mean, because as a young person, I mean, I get so frustrated by some of the things that I see every single day, the things I hear on the news, the things that I see not happening. But I do know about the trailblazers, who who we all look up to, who kind of push through that inertia themselves and were able to.
Nelson Mandela on the wall right behind you.
Yeah, Nelson Mandela, Malala Yousafzai. I think of Mary McLeod Bethune, who helped to start a New Deal program specifically supporting the employment of African Americans at the time, because the New Deal was really just, in many ways, way too narrowly focused on white Americans and was not supporting people of color. And Mary McLeod Bethune was able to influence Eleanor Roosevelt and the then President FDR to actually make a change and create this program that ended up hiring and employing hundreds of thousands of Black Americans. And, you think about all of the inertia it took to get to that stage, everything that Mary McLeod Bethune had to go through, but also so many people before her to get to that stage, and all the progress that we've had to make since then and struggled to make. And I just look to people like her who, created this jobs program, were able to get people into employment in a way that they weren't getting into employment. Those are the people that inspire me, because I know the statistics, I know how bleak they can sound, but I also know that there are things, I don't want to say easy solutions, but direct and clear solutions that we can enact. And we just got to keep pushing for those and not lose sight of the fact that these issues are solvable if we really focus on doing the things that we know can address them and not giving up on those things happening. And so I guess I've chosen to not lose hope because I've seen the power of persistence with so many of my heroes, and also folks that I surround myself with today who've, made huge things happen in their own right. And so, yeah, that really keeps me hopeful, keeps me driven in this work.
Connor, what has been your biggest leap of faith thus far in your life?
Oh, wow. There've been several, but I would say the biggest one was probably starting Breaktime. When I started Breaktime, I knew I wanted to do my own thing. I knew I wanted to be a social entrepreneur, but it can be so challenging to deviate from the natural path. For me, at the time when I was in college, it felt natural to do what everyone else was doing, which is, start to look for jobs at large companies and spaces that have like career paths and ladders and like real direction, and there's clear sense of what you'd be making, what you would need to get in those jobs, how you need to prepare for the interviews. Like, it just seemed like the clear natural path, and that was not interesting to me whatsoever. And I think the biggest leap of faith that I made was saying I can make my own path that satisfies my interests, that provides a really fulfilling learning opportunity for me. And I can do it in a way that's financially sustainable for me, that will allow me to like live my best life and do all the things that I want to do. That took a lot of faith. And I think for many years, it was not looking like that was going to be the case. I mean, after I started Breaktime, and I say this truthfully, there was not a single moment where I ever have regretted doing this. And there was not a single moment where I looked back and said, oh, I think I should think about something else. Like, for the last 5 years, I have never, ever thought I don't want to be doing Breaktime, or I should start looking at other options. Like, I just completely buried myself in this, like turned my blinders on to other opportunities and said, this is what I'm doing. And I believe that it's going to work out. And I believe that one day, a couple of years from now, I'm going to have a salary. I'm going to be able to, make a living, do the things I want to do, travel. And I had to kind of push myself in that way to do it, because if I took those blinders off too soon and started looking at other opportunities, I think it could have been a distraction to the fact that this is really what my calling was. This is what I wanted to do. And also, it's been the most amazing learning opportunity anyone could ever ask for. I get challenged every single day, not only to learn about these issues and the things that our associates, our young people are going through, but also to learn from my team, learn how to manage a team, learn how to build an organization, learn about nonprofit finance. This has been the most incredible opportunity and continues to be that for me. And the biggest leap of faith I ever took was believing that it was going to be possible. And I'm so glad that I did.
In this season of the show, Connor, we're talking to people who have found their voice or who are in the process of finding their voice. And I wonder, what do you want to say with what you're doing and what you're building?
Yeah. So I think for me, it all comes back to sort of my central motto in life, which is that every single young person deserves the opportunities and support they need to reach their full potential. That's what I always come back to after a long day, after a lot of frustrations, after seeing crazy things in the news. I come back to we need to make sure that every single young person has the opportunities and support they need to reach their full potential. And we need to do everything possible to make that happen. I think centering that in my life and in my work has really helped me to stay focused and to ensure that that is always top of mind and driving my action and what I do. And I think while doing that, I've also had to push myself to learn a lot about myself personally, embrace myself personally. Until 2018, around the time I started Breaktime, I wasn't even fully aware of my sexuality or even the possibilities of my sexuality. The journey that I've gone on over the last 5 years of coming out, now having a boyfriend, like has been crazy and transformational and incredible, but also scary. And so I think for me, finding my voice has been a combination of finding the things that I really care about, which is working with young people and breaking the cycle of young adult homelessness, but also like finding myself along the way, which in many ways has kind of taken longer and been harder. And it's been a constant process. But I always find that, centering my goals, centering the things that I most care about helps me to do that. Because when I think about the young people that I work with, that's what helps me feel braver about being myself and being my true authentic self and putting on makeup for this interview or like doing things that a few years ago to me would have scared the hell out of me and still scare me, but I feel brave enough to do them because of the young people I work with. And so it's all
Mm.
sort of connected, but I think both the personal and professional journey for me have really been centered around working with young people and making sure that we all have the right opportunities we need to reach our full potential. Because I've had that with break time, I've had that with my family support, and I want to make sure that that's not the anomaly.
Mm. Connor, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so glad we had a chance to sit down and talk about what you're doing because it's powerful, serious work, man.
Thank you so much, Patrick. It was really an honor to be on the show.
Yes. To those of you who are watching or listening, remember, we all have a voice. Use yours wisely. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Connor.
Thank you.